It all started with a piece of paper, a little creamy white envelope tucked neatly between the pizza flyers and the junk mail. And it felt like a declaration of war on my perfectly average life. I was just Ben Stone, living in the quiet, manicured suburb of Willow Creek, minding my own business, enjoying my little slice of the American dream. And apparently, that dream was about to be scrutinized down to the millimeter. I mean, my lawn was green, it was mowed, it was fine. What could possibly be wrong? I unfolded the letter, and that's when the absurdity began to dawn on me. It was a formal notice of grounds violation from the Willow Creek Property Owners Association, and the charge was almost unbelievable. My grass blades, they claimed, were an egregious 3.1 inches long. A blatant, flagrant violation of the community covenant's strictly enforced 2.5-inch regulation. 2.5 inches, I muttered to myself, staring out at the yard like it was a crime scene, shaking my head and wondering, who on earth measures grass with a ruler? But the POA, I realized quickly, they didn't just measure it. They worshipped that measuring tape, wielding it with the smug authority of a medieval sheriff. The letter ended with a crisp little demand, an initial fine of $35. A stark, undeniable reminder that they were in charge, and I was apparently a negligent groundskeeper. That was only the beginning, the gentle slope into the canyon of bureaucratic madness. Over the next few weeks, the violations escalated, each one more ridiculous than the last, chipping away at my sanity and my bank account. There was a fine for a small patch of discoloration, a faint yellow spot I later traced back to an overzealous squirrel burying an acorn, but the PO called it non-uniform greenness. Then came a written reprimand, followed by a fine, for a slightly lighter shade of fescue that had somehow infiltrated my otherwise acceptable turf. Seriously, they were nitpicking grass genetics now. But the absolute, flaming, incandescent cherry on top was the $75 penalty for seasonal decorations that disrupt the harmonious flow of the community aesthetic. The offending decoration? A simple, deep orange, perfectly tasteful pumpkin I'd placed on my porch for Halloween. I nearly choked on my morning coffee. A pumpkin. I showed the notice to my next-door neighbor, Eleanor Vance, a wonderfully sarcastic woman who tended to a collection of award-winning, suspiciously tall sunflowers, which I was certain were violating some obscure altitude law. She leaned over the hedge, sipping her iced tea, her eyes twinkling with pure, delightful mischief. A pumpkin, Ben? Oh, honey, don't you know? Pumpkins are disruptive. They clash with the, let me see. Ah, yes, the monochromatic, year-round palette of the suburban landscape. She punctuated her sentence with a little theatrical shudder. I rolled my eyes. Monochromatic palette? It's a pumpkin, Eleanor, not a flock of neon pink flamingos. This is insane. But the POA, under the self-appointed, tyrannical leadership of our newly elected president, Cassandra Thorne, or as Eleanor and I had nicknamed her, Cassandra the Cruel, was on a mission. Cassandra was obsessed with control, with uniformity, with turning Willow Creek into a sterile, beige, step-4 nightmare where every house looked identical and every resident was a mindless drone conforming to her ridiculous decrees. Her motivation, I would come to understand later, wasn't just about lawn care. It was about power. It was about reminding everyone that she was the gatekeeper of Willow Creek's perfection, and she was thoroughly enjoying the absolute, petty authority it gave her. She derived a kind of sick pleasure from making people feel small. The third fine, however, was the ultimate breaking point, the moment I felt the switch flip from frustrated resident to full-blown rebel. It arrived on a crisp late October morning, a bright red envelope mocking me with its official seal and its grim, single-line message. Notice of lawn care violation. 1-1. Fallen maple leaf observed on property. Immediate removal required. Failure to comply results in $100 fine. I stared at that notice, my blood pressure spiking so fast I thought I might need an ambulance. A single leaf. They were fining me for a single maple leaf that had dared to drift onto my pristine, 3.1-inch long grass. This wasn't ridiculous, it was malice. It was a calculated, deliberate act of provocation. I crumpled the notice into a tight ball, my hand shaking with a righteous fury I didn't know I possessed. That's it, I muttered to myself, staring down the street toward Cassandra's perpetually immaculate, and frankly, unsettlingly perfect home. They've pushed me too far. If they want a perfect lawn, I'll give them a perfect lawn. But it won't be the lawn they're expecting. The crumpled red paper was my Rubicon. There was no going back to just being Ben Stone, quiet homeowner. My initial frustration had morphed into a steel-hard resolve, an almost giddy determination to fight back with a level of theatricality that would make Cassandra's blood run cold. If they wanted perfection, I would deliver it. But it would be a perfection that utterly, hilariously, and undeniably violated the spirit of every single one of their absurd rules. The brilliant, absurd idea struck me around 3 a.m. I sat bolt upright in bed, a mischievous, wide grin spreading across my face in the darkness. A snow machine. Not one of those flimsy little backyard contraptions you buy at Home Depot, either. No, I needed the big guns. I needed a giant, ridiculous, professional-grade snowmaking cannon. It was perfect. It was petty. It was the ultimate, literal, and cold act of defiance against the HOA's lawn-obsessed tyranny. They wanted a perfect lawn year-round? Fine. I would give them a winter wonderland. Let's see how their precious 2.5-inch height regulation, their uniform greenness requirement, and their ban on disruptive seasonal decorations held up against a foot of deep, fluffy, artificial snow. The sheer, delightful absurdity of the image, palm trees standing guard over a thick blanket of manufactured powder, fueled me. The next morning, high on a cocktail of coffee and glorious, unbridled spite, I dove into the depths of the internet, researching snow cannons with the fervor of an Olympic athlete training for the gold. I found it. A behemoth, a gleaming monstrosity of metal, hoses, and powerful turbines, capable of blanketing an entire ski slope, let alone my quarter-acre suburban plot. It was absurdly oversized, a fact that only amplified its appeal. I imagined Cassandra's face when she saw this thing parked in my driveway, a snow-spewing, industrial-grade testament to my rebellion. The purchase was a blur of hurried phone calls and credit card anxiety, but I knew, with absolute certainty, that this was the best money I had ever spent. The arrival of the Arctic Enforcer 5000 was, to put it mildly, a spectacle. It showed up on a massive flatbed truck, its colossal form dwarfing my modest home. The driver, a grizzled man named Doug with a handlebar mustache, just whistled as he surveyed the scene. "You sure you got the right address, buddy?" he asked, a wide grin splitting his face. "This beauty is usually headed for, mountains, not cul-de-sacs." "It's the right address, Doug," I assured him, returning the grin. "And trust me, it's going to be put to very good use." The installation, surprisingly, became a quiet, community effort. Eleanor, tired of Cassandra's escalating tyranny and clearly hungry for entertainment, rallied to the cause. We spent an entire afternoon maneuvering the Enforcer into my backyard, its pipes and nozzles snaking across the lawn like a massive metallic serpent. We camouflaged it with heavy-duty tarps, strategically placed hedges, and a truly ridiculous number of potted ferns. It was like a scene straight out of a Cold War spy movie, only instead of a nuclear device, we were hiding an industrial snow machine. "Think they'll notice?" Eleanor asked, adjusting a hibiscus plant to obscure a particularly conspicuous hose coupling. I had a glint in my eye. "They'll notice, Eleanor. But not until it's too late." The first snowfall was glorious. I woke up early, heart pounding with anticipation and a delicious sense of impending chaos. I flipped the heavy-duty switch, and the Arctic Enforcer 5000 roared to life, a deep, satisfying hum of industrial power. Within seconds, a massive torrent of fluffy, bright white, beautiful artificial snow began spewing high into the air, gracefully descending to blanket my entire yard. In minutes, my little suburban patch was transformed into a pristine, dazzling winter wonderland, a stark, surreal contrast to the perfect green conformity surrounding it. Cassandra the Cruel, naturally, was the first to notice. Her shriek of absolute outrage echoed through the quiet morning air, a sharp, dissonant counterpoint to the soft whoosh of the snow cannon. I watched from my living room window as she stormed across the street, her face contorted in a mask of pure, unadulterated indignation. "Ben Stone, what in the name of God have you done?" she screeched, her voice barely audible above the machine's turbine. "This is outrageous. This is an abomination." I opened the front door, feigning a look of complete innocence. An abomination, Cassandra? But you wanted a perfect lawn, didn't you? Uniformly white, no exceptions. I'm simply complying with the POA's highest standards of aesthetic consistency. Cassandra sputtered, her perfectly made-up face turning an alarming shade of deep purple. This isn't what we meant. This is artificial. I chuckled, a low, easy sound that only seemed to infuriate her more. Artificial? But Cassandra, snow is just frozen water. It's perfectly natural, and besides, I paused, gesturing dramatically toward a hastily printed sign I'd staked next to the enforcer. It's just seasonal decor. The season? To be jolly, after all. Her eye twitched violently. She opened her mouth to unleash another tirade, but I cut her off, my voice dripping with mock sincerity. And just to ensure the POA board members feel extra festive, I said, pressing a button on a large, clearly labeled remote control, I've added a few special touches. Suddenly, the air filled with the impossibly loud, synchronized sounds of a full orchestral chorus blasting jingle bells and deck the halls. Candy cane lights, strategically placed around the now snow-covered lawn, began blinking wildly in sync with the music, creating a dazzling, slightly terrifying spectacle of Christmas chaos. Cassandra stood frozen, a symphony of rage, confusion, disbelief, and a flicker of genuine fear crossing her face. She stared at the snow, the lights, the sign proclaiming, lawn maintained at perfect consistency year-round. She had been out-petty-ed, outmaneuvered, and utterly out-Christmased in October. The snow, that beautiful, fluffy, persistent artificial snow, was just the beginning. The POA's response was a predictable, hilarious blend of bureaucratic flailing and outrage. They convened an emergency meeting, their faces grim, their rule books clutched like shields against the encroaching white menace. I could practically hear Cassandra's desperate voice echoing through the walls of the community clubhouse. There must be a rule against this, she shrieked. Artificial snow. It's unnatural. It's disruptive. It violates the spirit of the community. But their frantic search was in vain. The POA rule book, that hallowed, sacred Bible of suburban regulation, was utterly, hilariously silent on the matter of manufactured precipitation. There's nothing in here about snow, Mr. Henderson, stammered the perpetually flustered POA treasurer, his finger trembling as he traced the lines of the index. Only grass height, paint swatches, and approved holiday lighting colors. But the aesthetic, another board member sputtered. It clashes with the harmonious flow of the summer landscape. Ever the helpful neighbor, I decided to offer my assistance, strolling into the meeting with a warm coat, a thermos of cocoa, and a look of profound concern. Disruptive aesthetics? I echoed, my eyes sparkling. But Cassandra, you insisted on a uniformly green lawn. White is the ultimate uniform. It's providing a consistent aesthetic experience year-round. She twitched again. That's not what we meant. This is artificial lawn modification. Artificial? I raised an eyebrow, taking a slow sip of my cocoa. But Cassandra, as I've explained, snow is just frozen water. It's perfectly natural. Just like rain, or your tears of frustration. The POA board members exchanged bewildered, defeated glances. They were trapped in their own logic, their arguments crumbling like a poorly constructed snowman. They had no legal basis, no rule to enforce, and no justification for their outrage. They were powerless, defeated by their own obsession with control and my unwavering commitment to creative, legal pettiness. Meanwhile, the rest of Willow Creek was absolutely loving it. The neighborhood, long deprived of the joys of real snow due to our perpetually mild climate, flocked to my yard. Their children, shrieking with excitement, built lopsided snowmen and launched epic snowball battles. This is the best day ever. I overheard one kid yell, his cheeks flushed with the synthetic cold. It's like Christmas in October. Even the adults couldn't resist. They gathered on my lawn, sipping their own hot drinks and marveling at the sheer absurdity of it all. The POA's pathetic attempts to spoil the fun only solidified their image as the community villains, the Grinch-like figures trying to steal everyone's sudden, manufactured joy. Those POA folks are completely unhinged, declared my normally reserved neighbor, Mr. Wallace, shaking his head. Trying to ban snow? What's next? Banning sunshine. The outrage backfired spectacularly. Cassandra and her cronies had inadvertently created the greatest community gathering space Willow Creek had ever seen, a symbol of shared laughter and defiance against their ridiculous tyranny. The snow-covered lawn, ironically, became my greatest marketing tool. News of the rebel lawn spread like wildfire through local news and, more importantly, social media. It wasn't long before the first wave of influencers arrived, phones held high, ready to capture the surreal spectacle for their eager followers. Winter Wonderland in the Sun Belt. Hashtag Snowpocalypse, hashtag Petty Revenge Goals. My story, the story of the man who dared to defy the lawn police, went viral. Every social media post, every news segment, painted Cassandra and the POA as the villains, the humorless bureaucrats trying to crush the community's joy. Their carefully crafted image of authority crumbled under the weight of public ridicule and a steadily growing mountain of artificial snow. Then came the snowball effect, and yes, pun absolutely intended. Inspired by my defiance, other neighbors joined the movement. Snow machines, once unheard of in Willow Creek, became the must-have item of the season. Lawns across the neighborhood began to transform. If Ben can do it, so can we, boomed old Mr. Johnson, my perpetually grumpy neighbor, as he unveiled his own, slightly smaller, but equally impressive snow cannon. They can't tell us what to do with our own yards. Eleanor, never one to be outdone, went all out. She created a full winter-themed wonderland, complete with elegant ice sculptures, a miniature skating rink made of synthetic ice, and a life-size Santa Claus fashioned entirely from my signature snow. It's called seasonal decor, Cassandra, she announced triumphantly as Cassandra drove by, her face a mask of barely contained fury. The neighborhood was transformed, a surreal and hilarious juxtaposition of palm trees and snowdrifts. The POA's attempts to enforce uniformity had created a community united in its defiance, a joyous, absurd North Pole born from the ashes of their petty tyranny. Facing a full-blown PR crisis in a neighborhood that looked less like a suburb and more like a resort in Aspen, the POA called one last, desperate emergency meeting. It was a pathetic attempt to regain control. I received the meeting notice, and a confident, almost bored grin spread across my face. This wasn't just a meeting. It was an opportunity to deliver the final, theatrical blow. I casually tipped off a few key local news stations and online bloggers, inviting them to witness the POA's desperate attempt to crush the spirit of absurd, manufactured fun. The meeting room was packed, cameras flashing, reporters scribbling furiously. Cassandra, her usual air of cold authority replaced by a visible panic, nervously adjusted her spectacles. "Mr. Stone," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "We've called this meeting to discuss your excessive snow." "Excessive," I echoed, feigning confusion while the reporters leaned in. "But Cassandra, you were the one who insisted on a uniformly white lawn. I'm simply providing a consistent aesthetic experience, year-round." A ripple of laughter spread through the room. "This is not what we meant," she sputtered. "This is disruptive. It's. She searched frantically for the ultimate word, the one that would encapsulate the POA's entire outrage and justify their fall. She finally landed on it, her voice rising in indignation. "It's un-American. It's a blatant attack on the sanctity of summer. It's a war on Christmas." The room erupted. Reporters couldn't believe their luck. "HOA declares war on Christmas," the headline screamed an hour later. "Suburban tyrants try to ban snow in November." The POA's attempt to control the narrative had backfired so spectacularly that they had permanently cemented themselves as the Grinch-like villains of a real-life holiday movie. Their authority was further undermined when the local mayor, Daniel "Danny" Rivers, a jovial man with a talent for publicity, stepped in. "Year-round snow in our sunny city," he declared in a press conference that same afternoon. "It's brilliant. It's unique. It's a potential tourist attraction." He gleefully announced plans for a city-wide Willow Creek Winter Wonderland Festival, a celebration of my snow-covered lawn and the community's hilarious defiance. The POA board members, defeated and demoralized, could only watch as their carefully constructed world of rules and regulations crumbled around them. They had become a laughing stock, a symbol of bureaucratic overreach and petty tyranny. And the snow, That beautiful, fluffy, artificial snow had become a symbol of freedom. The final, deeply satisfying blow came a week later in the form of Cassandra Thorne's resignation. She stormed into the next POA meeting, her face a mask of defeat and resentment. "I can't take it anymore," she shrieked, her voice cracking with emotion. "The snow, the laughter, the joy. It's utterly unbearable." Mr. Henderson, the perpetually flustered treasurer, sighed, a hint of pity and relief in his voice. "Cassandra, perhaps it's time to let it go." Eleanor, now a beloved community icon, chimed in firmly. "The order is gone, Cassandra, and good riddance. We're having fun. The kids are happy. You're the only one who seems to have a problem with a little bit of winter magic." Cassandra Thorne's shoulders slumped. She had lost. She had lost her precious power, her precious rules, and her precious perfect lawn, all to a snow machine, a community's rebellious spirit, and a healthy, persistent dose of petty revenge. "Fine," she muttered, barely a whisper. "I resign." And with that, her reign of HOA tyranny was finally, mercifully over. The snow machine, once a symbol of defiance, has become a permanent, beloved community fixture. I still run the Arctic Enforcer 5000 occasionally, mostly on hot days. I've even started charging $5 for an official July snowball fight permit, a cheeky, highly lucrative nod to the POA's obsession with fines. The snow machine taught me that sometimes the only way to fight absurd rules is with an even more absurd, beautifully creative act of resistance. It taught us all that community isn't about conformity. It's about shared laughter, and sometimes it takes a mountain of fake snow to bring real people together. So, tell me, what's the most absurd, ridiculous rule your local HOA or community board has ever tried to enforce? Did you fight back? And if you did, what was your own version of the Arctic Enforcer 5000? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and you never know, your story might just inspire the next great act of suburban defiance.